This year was our 20th year attending San Diego Comic-Con, if you include the 2 online years of the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. Unfortunately, we didn't get to be exhibitors again, which we were hoping for because that was our best convention appearance by far in terms of exposure and sales. We did have a pretty smooth convention experience, though I'll admit it did get a little rocky at the end. By the way, when I do these videos, I'm basically reading off of a script most of the time, because it's 5 days and it's the experience of 4 people that I'm summarizing, and it's largely written from my perspective because I'm the one who's writing the script and I don't want to forget anything important. Like last year, we booked another day at a hotel in the event that we get to table again. Although that didn't happen, we went down a day early anyway and looked at some shops in San Diego that we normally wouldn't, like Bards and Cards, which once had a Bloomborough pre-release at the exact same time as the convention, so we couldn't go. We also tried to hit up Patrick Ballesteros' pop-up at Mnemonic Coffee, but the line was way too long for us, so we bailed. SDCC may have long lines, but even we have limits on what we're willing to do. Otherwise, this day was mostly the calm before the storm. Since we were already in town, we used the extra time in the morning on Wednesday to look at building wraps and activations during setup. There weren't as many at the convention center as last year, but it was still weird to see things like the Nintendo Switch 2 demonstrators going through a whole scheduled and outlined meeting about what to do at the offsite. We wanted to try looking at merch, but the line was a bit too long, plus we kept eyeing the train to make sure it wouldn't trap us as we traveled back and forth between the convention center and the gas lamp. Once we decided to head inside, we waited 4.5 hours to get onto the floor and did our usual run for exclusives. It's here where I'll mention that there's this book series called Dungeon Crawler Carl, which you would likely have come across by now. In case you don't know, it's about a man and his ex-girlfriend's cat who participate in a post-apocalyptic game show. Well, I just got into that series. I've read the small print paperback for book 1, so I was interested in snagging some DCC stuff. I'm even, wearing a shirt for it. I don't know if you can see it. I said this in the haul video, but I got it from Wolfgang Industries, and I like how artistic it is compared to, funny quote Princess Donut. To my surprise, I was mostly successful in obtaining the items I had narrowed down my list to, but I considered Karen Hellion and Patrick Ballesteros a wash because their lines were a bit too long. In fact, we got almost everything we wanted on preview night, and scoped out some items to think about for later. Since that went so well, we had a good feeling about the rest of the con. We showed up a little late on Thursday, which seems to be one of the worst days for morning crowds in general, so we had to wait outside in the sun for about an hour. Good thing we had a sun umbrella. Apart from looking around at the floor for a bit, I spoke with one of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Head judges I've worked with, who is stationed at the Konami booth, and Trevor got into the Hasbro line of the afternoon, but what we wanted was sold out for the day, so he bailed. Otherwise, we went to a few panels. Dad attended How to Get News Coverage again, which mostly covered the same things. However, we did learn about San Diego Comic Fest, which we would consider attending if we knew all the details. Trevor went to Kotobukiya's Versatile Hand Model, an open discussion with artists and creatives, which featured Sir Richard Taylor from Weta Workshop, Kotobukiya sculptor Hajime Shirahige, and the highlight, Takahiro Kagami, the lead animator from Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters. This panel was largely shilling the hand models, but he did still learn some valuable insight about the importance of hands as a form of expression in art. Trevor and I also went with Dad to Build Your Own World and Intellectual Property, which wasn't what we expected. Not that the panel wasn't valuable in its own right, but the description gave us a different expectation of its contents, so we didn't find it as helpful to us as we would have liked. The main highlight of the day, however, was getting into Hall H again. As a reminder from last year's vlog, Hall H is actually easy to get into if you go to the Today line instead of the wristbanded Next Day line by going around the end of the convention center and walking through a security checkpoint that leads you to the tents. 3 of us walked in on the panel for Stuart Fails to Save the Universe, a scripted spin-off of The Big Bang Theory on HBO Max. Although we didn't have much interest in the greater Big Bang Theory cinematic universe, we found the panel entertaining and gained a mild interest in at least seeing the first episode. Afterwards, Trevor did his best to join us after the Kotobukiya hand model panel for Collider's Directors on Directing, which featured Zach Krager, Jonathan Goldstein, and John Francis Daly talking about their experience as directors while answering pre-taped questions from fans, aka industry veterans. We found this panel rather insightful, and not only saw trailers for Mayday and Resident Evil, but even got to see a full clip from the latter that took place early in the film. Hearing Zach Krager talk about his take on Resident Evil and watching the clip made me more confident in his ability to finally do the property justice on the big screen, and now I really can't wait to see it. What those of you watching may better know this panel for, however, is the surprise appearance from Johnny Depp, who emerged on stage in character and in full costume to promote the upcoming film Ebenezer, complete with a first look at the trailer. I couldn't hear everything he said, but it was still cool to finally witness the kind of moment that everyone seems to know SDCC for. Before you ask, no, we didn't see Ryan Reynolds crashing the Marvel panel as Deadpool. In general, we're not sure that it's worth devoting several hours of the day to watching a trailer that they'll post on YouTube right after.
Right before it's not. Where are you going?
On Friday, we arrived at the convention center at a better time, so we decided to try Hasbro again, but to no avail. With a lot of time during the day, we looked around the floor a bit more, and even met former Power Squared colorist Nina Kupenda-Gaylord in person for the first time. For those who don't know, she was actually nominated for an Eisner Award this year for Best Coloring for the middle grade graphic novel Chickenpox. Although she didn't win, the fact that she was nominated at all for such a high honor is a big achievement, and we feel proud of her success. Throughout the day, we got in some signings. Symbiote had Greg Berger and Frank Todaro for Transformers in a tightly snaked line. What made the signing particularly cool is how Todaro lit up when Trevor asked him to sign JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 4 Diamond is Unbreakable.
Dude, thank you. Make my day.
While I was otherwise occupied with a panel, Trevor managed to get Daniel Warren Johnson our copy of Murder Falcon, incredible read by the way, and Takashi Iizuka from Sonic Team to sign our copy of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. It's our favorite Sonic game, and as it turns out, it's Iizuka's favorite as well. I also got my copy of Watch Dogs 2 signed by voice actors Ruffin Prentice III and Sean Baichu, I hope I didn't butcher those names, who liked hearing how I thought it was the best game in the trilogy thanks to a satisfying gameplay and compelling story and characters. When there was an opportunity, we actually watched an anime, and one I had actually planned on seeing at that, Scryed. My interest initially came from learning that it had a similar power system to JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, but with alters instead of sands, although my research after writing this, I learned that it had some similarities to X-Men. So I like that I finally got to sample the show, although it was episode 17, Ayase Tarada, out of context. I don't know why whoever puts on the anime in the room picks a seemingly random episode, as it doesn't seem like the best way to expose someone to a new show, but regardless, I would still gladly watch more Scryed. I couldn't follow everything that was going on, but something about the emotional element still spoke to me. We also went to 2 panels. Dad and I went to Pitching Animation in 2026, what buyers actually want now, which had some genuine advice that matched what the description promised, but the pace is too quick to both take pictures of the slides, as suggested, and write down any supplemental notes, so I eventually gave up on that part. The other panel, which we all went to, was Mega 64 panel in large format 70mm ticket upcharge, which was very entertaining and a fun way to cap off the night. I will mention that they debuted an episode of Cringe Lords, a channel of theirs that I wasn't aware of until the panel, which had Derek and Sean creating merch through Fiverr. One item was a poster for Cringe Lords that they intended on having available as a giveaway at their booth, but it slipped their mind and they only ordered the posters 4 days prior. During the panel, Rocco checked the status and saw they reached Montebello, California, which is in Los Angeles County. As such, they weren't sure if they would make it to the convention before it ended, but told panel attendees to check back on Saturday or Sunday. If we asked for the Cringe Lords poster, they would slip us one. As such, that became a side quest of ours for the last 2 days. On Saturday, we made sure we got to the convention center early so that Trevor could claim a wristband for our only exclusives portal win, a signing with Brian Lee O'Malley. Since we had the opportunity, we decided to try for Hasbro one more time. With some persistence, Dad managed to get into the line and got the one item we were after, the special cereal box set based on a real canceled breakfast product. By the time Dad got in, Hasbro had dipped into the damaged product that they sold at a small discount, but a win was a win. Trevor and I heard from Hasbro employees that at that point they would run out by Sunday, but people who couldn't get one would have another chance through Hasbro Pulse on August 11th. During the rest of the day, we managed to walk through the rest of the floor, which included a visit to Funko later in the day. I noticed they had something I kind of wanted, but at the same time it would be a pain because the general public couldn't behave themselves, to the point that Funko switched to a random QR code system, so we decided not to bother with that. Also, the Brian Lee O'Malley signing went off without a hitch, and they even let me join Trevor at the table. Your success in doing this for a signing depends entirely on the booth, so clear it with them before you try this. Since I had lost my portal entries for Matt Dinneman signings, I decided to swing by Penguin Random House to learn how the ticketed signings for Sunday would work, only to find out that they had gone through all of the available tickets on preview night. This told me that I never had a chance, so I decided I would try again next year, since I was sure Dungeon Crawler Carl would be there for years to come. As for panels, we all saw the Saturday Cartoon Voices panel, which is always fun to go to, and Dad and I later went to 2 separate crowdfunding panels at the same time. He went to the Future Kickstarter Comics, which wasn't very very helpful for people who don't already have a large following and was mostly promoting their own projects. I went to Crowdfunding in Today's Economy, which was largely advertising the crowdfunding platform Zoop, who had recently branched out into helping fulfill Kickstarter projects, but they still did as they said they would and offered insight into how they navigate the challenges of today's economy and offered some genuine advice, like building up an email list as soon as you can rather than buying ads for your project. Afterwards, everyone else joined me for a look back at animated series from the 80s, which features some TV animation writers from that time sharing their experiences. Although I don't personally have much nostalgia for 80s cartoons by virtue of being a 90s kid, I always find stories from that time period fascinating and insightful as a fan of animation. Sunday was our usual cleanup day, and we managed to get a number of books we wanted on sale. Always wait for Sunday if you want books from certain publishers. Not much else happened during the day until Dad went to the do's and don'ts to kickstart your first comic, which had some genuine advice for beginners, while Trevor did a signing for Jeff Smith. As for me, I had a very mixed experience. You see, Matt Dinneman was in a number of panels throughout the con, including one on Sunday called Streaming Has Changed Media Forever. I had given up on seeing Matt Dinneman at any point, but I figured I might as well take one final stab at seeing him on a panel, so I went to the room to see if I could make it into the one before that, Needful Things, Collecting Stephen King. To my surprise, there were still a handful of open seats, so I sat down and was surprised about the existence of an industry around collecting Stephen King books. There's even a whole convention called KingCon dedicated to the practice, for which they offered a discount code to panel attendees. And for those Stephen King fans who might be watching this, I'm going to hook you up right now. They also talked about how you don't need much money to start collecting, like maybe only $100 to $200, and advise only collecting things that you like. I'm not going to start down the rabbit hole for Stephen King stuff, but it was surprising nonetheless. Right after the panel ended, a number of people did leave, which left room for more people to come in, largely Matt Dinneman fans. I will say that Streaming Has Changed Media Forever was an interesting panel, as they did cover topics like how the fast pace of streaming shows has influenced the pacing of books, or how you should always get an entertainment lawyer involved if you publish a work and it gets adapted in any way, shape, or form, so that everyone is happy and you don't get scammed. The panelists also offered advice like persisting and finishing with what you're writing, as well as not using AI and writing pilot scripts, not just specs, as evidence of your skills if you want to get into TV. As a writer myself, this was pretty fascinating. The ending of the panel, however, is where the mixed part comes in. During the con, I ended up seeing on social media that some people randomly ran into Matt Dinneman, which made me jealous and had me carrying around my copy of DCC just in case the opportunity struck. Shortly before this Sunday panel had started, I saw him interacting with some fans, including signing books, but I wrestled with my emotions on approaching him like that, which included trying to think how he feels about that outside of a scheduled signing. Well, I don't know if it was my lack of sleep from across the 5 days or some weird pressure from the actions of the crowd, but when the panel ended, I found myself walking towards him and hesitating a couple times. I ended up leaving the panel room when everyone else had to, with Dinneman close by. I still don't know what to do, but I ended up surrendering to mob mentality and pulled out my book for an autograph, which he looked prepared for. I would like to think that I wasn't obnoxious, but I told him with different words I was looking forward to reading more, and I'm not sure he even looked up at me once. As soon as that interaction ended, I realized I had somehow accomplished everything I wanted with DCC, including merch, a panel, and an autograph, but it felt hollow. Everything lined up for me, but it wasn't the more controlled circumstances I would have preferred to meet Dinneman under. I don't know if I'm overthinking it, but honestly I regained a lot of self-awareness and felt like a jerk for approaching him when he was likely already exhausted from a long convention where he interacted with who knows how many people already, and he was likely just ready to leave, but had rather enthusiastic crawlers, and maybe some scalpers, asking him for a signature or treating him like some sort of attraction. I'm not going to let this experience stop me from reading more of the books, as I really do want to know what goes on beyond the second floor, but I would really like to try meeting him again in an environment where everyone has mutually agreed that a signature is more than okay. I'm pretty sure other crawlers would just be happy that they managed to get Dinneman to sign their book, but I guess I'm not one of those crawlers. From now on, I won't let FOMO or peer pressure break me again. Fortunately, the con still ended on a positive note, as Mega64 did manage to get the Cringe Lords posters on Sunday, and we're giving them out to panel attendees like us, so we claimed them on the way out. Thanks, Mega64. Just as a quick sidebar, I think CCI should have a firmer stance on AI. While walking the floor, I saw a small press booth with artwork that was blatantly AI generated, and UCC clearly used AI to generate posters hawking their wares or hyping their signing for Matt Dinniman. I know CCI banned AI art from the art show following pressure from artists, but limiting that ban to such a small part of the convention falls short of what other conventions like Dragon Con have done. Outside CCI's jurisdiction, I also noticed that Sweet Things used AI generated art to sell a couple soft serves, which disappointed me as someone who likes getting a rare Dole Whip that doesn't require going to Disneyland. Before I end this video, I'd like to share some advice about eating at a convention like SDCC if you have GERD, a gastrointestinal disorder where your stomach acid can reach up to your esophagus. Earlier this year, I gained the debuff, and to make a long story short, started treatment with a month of PPI usage and followed the Acid Watcher diet, which helped immensely, but my symptoms are still present, even if greatly diminished. I also lost a lot of weight as a side effect, which also helps with dealing with GERD. Although you have to change what you're eating with the condition and need to make healthier food choices in general, you can still, depending on your exact situation, safely indulge at SDCC if you're smart about your approach. If you can customize your meals, try to remove your trigger foods. In my case, I included onion, garlic, or spicy sauces. Pace yourself while eating and try to eat smaller meals during the day as well as a couple snacks. After a meal, wait 2 or 3 hours before going to bed and sleep on your left side at an angle if possible. An inflatable travel wedge helped me out in this case. Depending on what you're advised by a doctor, nutritionist, or GI specialist, medication like famotidine or pantoprazole can help lower your heartburn risk if taken responsibly. Listen to your body and try something else if it doesn't. With these in mind, I was still able to eat at the restaurants I already liked without much issue, but I learned what did and didn't work for me so I can make adjustments in the future. Of course, once you get home after indulging in SDCC, you should go right back to your healthy diet. Well, that about wraps up this year. We were pretty in control for most of it and have a better idea of how to carry that over into next year. Hopefully, that also includes a more fitting interaction with Matt Dinniman. If you liked this, leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more, and I'll see you again next year.